So I just wanted to take a quick look at the 2015 film Ex Machina, which is a sci-fi film. I guess you could say to some degree it also touches on maybe drama type elements. It's definitely in that fantasy category, but this was definitely not only just a very visually striking film, I found it very beautiful. Um, but it's also a very strong and well-told story. It's a very basic plot. I think we've all run across this plot line before, but I really appreciated the way it was told this time around. So what we have going on here is the plot basically centers on Caleb, who I believe was a programmer. He was invited by his CEO, Nathan, to spend the week out at his lavish and reclusive home in order to, I guess, better study or determine whether or not a android prototype that he's been working on is capable of actual conscious thought. So basically what would you say, basically just kind of an experimentation, even though he was brought out there on false pretenses. Supposedly he won something that he hadn't been actually registered for, and he pretty much was specifically chosen and hauled out there to work on this project, which, taken into consideration the fact that he's restricted to certain areas of the house and the actual compound is very enclosed, it definitely had a very prison-like and claustrophobic effect to it, even though the home itself is just very, very lush and, very ooh la la. But, who would choose to live like that if they were hauled out somewhere? It's obviously not to his taste or to his liking. He's Caleb, it's understood, is just a very simple, mashed potatoes and gravy type of guy, he doesn't really need all of the fancy extras. So Nathan, who is basically the programmer, who actually does turn out to have just a very cruel and selfish nature, and who, for the majority of the film, the first time I watched this, I was referring to him as Douche Guy because I couldn't remember his name, nor did I care to learn what his name was. But yeah, he is definitely a total piece of work. Definitely treats his androids as belongings, even though they're modeled after people, and he apparently wants them to display human characteristics. So that in itself is just either misleading, or he's just full of BS and wants to show off his toys just because he can. But yeah, that's pretty much the impression I get, is he's just there to show off and be full of himself. But I think it's a very interesting story, and it's implied right from the beginning, even because there's I guess you could say, a maid or servant type android. Her name is Kyoko, and supposedly Nathan, or Douche Guy, never bothered to teach her English. So she is introduced as a non-speaking, non-English understanding character, and pretty much just talks all kind of garbage in front of her, around her, treats her like a prostitute, and this is an android. So what I really like, even though it's not very subtle, is there's a certain kitchen scene in the film where I don't remember if she's preparing a meal or if she's cleaning up after a meal, but the camera is trained on her face, and we see Caleb and the douche in the background, and just the way that her eyes just kind of slant to the side gives the impression she's listening, she understands, she knows what's going on, and she hasn't let on that she knows what's what. She's just playing dumb and playing her little role and waiting to get the upper hand, which definitely she does. But taking that into consideration, we have this character who's not even the main character. That would be Ava, who, you know, she definitely is up to something herself. At least that's the way I felt through watching the film, and especially on the second viewing, I picked up a lot more things that I hadn't caught the first time. So I love the subtleties, and I think the character development is very great. As I've said, it's a very basic plot, but you really have to dig in there and read between the lines in order to see what really is going on here. And mostly, I would simplify this as saying it's a story on human nature, you know, as far as abuse of power, but we all come back down to the same basic element. Any living creature, you know, synthetic or otherwise, all share one thing in common. And what is that? They desire freedom. They want to live as they want to live, not the way that they've had certain things imposed upon them. You know, they want to be free-thinking, independent creatures, and they want to do as they wish, and they want to do what pleases and makes them happy, which is perfectly understandable. I mean, and that's kind of where the whole argument comes in here, is some sort of object created with artificial intelligence capable of actual thought, emotion, you know, actual intelligence, you know, independent intelligence, not something that was programmed. So that is the argument here, and really it doesn't seem too far-fetched. You know, it's a storyline that I've run across numerous times throughout my childhood as well as an adult. I would say anything is possible, and that's what fascinates me so much about this film, is that they really do go in depth. The Ava character, she's the one who is pretty much being tested by Caleb. She goes through the effort to create rolling blackouts inside of the compound because she's aware that her sessions with Caleb are being video recorded and documented. So she causes these blackouts so that she can speak with him privately. And she warns him that Nathan the douche is not to be trusted, you know. And you definitely do see a lot of that in his behavior, and I don't know if it's just due to suggestion or observation, but it definitely becomes a lot more obvious once she has pointed this out, even though, you know, it's the obvious, you know. What is that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You know, kind of to quote Caesar there, but it definitely does in this situation. And you know, excuse me, you know, the characters are definitely very well developed. They're very intelligent, very intelligently written, but they're not perfect people. They both, Caleb as well as Nathan, do things that, you know, potentially could be frowned upon. The fact that Caleb is decided to help Ava because she's basically going to be broken down and remodeled into, you know, some 2.0 version, and basically she's going to lose her sense of self and become something else. And once again, with all living creatures, the will to survive is very strong. So we do see that throughout the film. Maybe she actually is manipulating, maybe she isn't capable of authentic emotion, but she gives Caleb the sense that she does have a romantic interest in him. And as crudely stated by Nathan, she is physically capable of copulation because that is part of her design. Whether or not one would determine that to be entirely unnecessary, why would someone, you know, go off and do that? Then again, we have the issue with Nathan and Kyoko, and he apparently does tend to use her to all of her functionality. But is it just, you know, that in itself is a whole different argument and discussion. The story really doesn't touch on that. It's just kind of an open window for interpretation, but that's just the thing. Everything is very multifaceted, and you're left to interpretation, and you're left to decide who you think these characters really are. So there are also numerous interesting references throughout the film, things that obviously myself not being a tech person, I would not have noticed. You know, of course, the company that Caleb works for, which is called Blue Book, which is an actual book containing theories about thinking and consciousness as a symbol-based linguistic game. I have no idea what in the world I just said because I don't speak that language. But, you know, there are definitely things in the film that just totally flew over my head, and they'll fly over, you know, numerous people's heads. You know, it's definitely a very smart film, but there are certain subtleties that you have to be able to catch, and I love the hidden technology references because they really do keep in theme with the film itself. You know, there are very clever touches throughout the film. There are also numerous mythological references and whatnot. One of the more obvious being Ava, which references Eve, the first woman. And of course we have Nathan and Caleb, which are also biblical names. So, you know, there's definitely a lot of, you know, I can't stop saying it, I'm not doing it on purpose, but there's a lot of cross-referencing and subtleties, and it amazes me because I missed a lot of this even in the first 2 runs of the film. But it's definitely one of those films that you can watch it, rewatch it, you will always notice and see something different and something new, and it's kind of a, I would say, more of a film that tends to self-adjust as you become more aware of what's actually going on or the subtleties. But I would say yes, definitely a very excellent, well-written film. And the thing that really surprised me here is that this is Alex Garland's debut film, but apparently since roughly the age of 11 or 12, he had been questioning the possibility of artificial intelligence and whether or not, you know, a machine or non-organic organism is actually capable of actual thought. So that's pretty much where the whole idea of Ex Machina comes from. But I would say, yeah, it definitely shows just the fact that, you know, the years of thought that he held on to this and molded over. And as I've said, it's not really a very detailed plot. I wouldn't say it's a plot-driven story, but it's definitely character-driven. Everything is very well developed. But yeah, I just really love and appreciate films that they just keep you thinking, and, you know, even if you always see or notice something different each time, it's definitely well worth it. You know, even if let's say you may not fully grasp every single subtlety, as I myself am not capable, because, you know, I'm not a technical person, but I'm still capable of appreciating a story, and I'd say just about anybody can actually sit and enjoy this film and appreciate it for what it is, you know, within their own frame of reference. It's, I would say, somewhat of a self-adjusting film. You know, they're not playing to a specific crowd here, but I would definitely encourage taking a look at that. And the Ava character herself is definitely very interesting herself. We definitely do get the sense that, yes, she is capable of actual independent thought, especially the way that she manipulates the situation, and, you know, just the one cruel last act that she commits before leaving the compound and going off to discover what it is that you know, held her interest. You know, it's definitely well worth it. One of the things that I hadn't noticed, though, is the film moves in chapters or in sessions. You know, each time Caleb interacts or studies or analyzes Ava, you know, we have Ava session 1 all the way through 7, which, interestingly enough, the ending of the film, she is no longer in session. She's not being studied or analyzed. It's referred to as Ava session 7, so it definitely implies she was actually studying Nathan and Caleb, not the other way around. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys on Ex Machina, and I will talk to you later.